name is Sudhi Uppuluri, and this is my conversation with Professor Nick Kotov on batteries. Professor?
Thank you, Sudhi. It's a pleasure.
Great. I want to ask you a number of things about material science, your research, and 1,000-cycle lithium-ion batteries. But before we get to that, can you give me a quick background about where you teach and what your focus area is?
I'm at the University of Michigan at the Department of Chemical Engineering.
Yeah.
My focus area and specialization is biomimetic nanostructures. These are the nanomaterials which are replicated and repeat some functionalities which are known in biological world.
Got it. So let's start with the battery first. I am interested in that automotive application first, and then I would love to dig more into the biomimetic technologies you talked about. You recently published work that talked about a 1,000-cycle lithium sulfur battery.
True.
And I would love to know, so how is this 1,000-cycle sulfur battery different than the battery we have today? What's unique about it?
I need to say that there are few things which I would like to highlight about this battery.
Okay.
It's not just the typical lithium-ion battery. It's a lithium-sulfur battery. It is important because these materials, lithium and sulfur, give the battery much lower cost.
Okay.
So also important that lithium-sulfur battery does not need cobalt, nickel, and some other materials which are imported and which are becoming rare too. So the cost of the battery becoming much more affordable. And if you know, say, all the electrical vehicles suffer from the high cost, and a big part of it is a battery cost. So the lithium sulfur battery is very attractive in that. It also have a big flaw, like a very strong punch in the gut to this battery, that it doesn't last long. The number of cycles that you can charge and recharge lithium sulfur battery is much smaller than normal batteries.
Okay. So as an example, how long is the normal battery and how much is the lithium sulfur?
The normal batteries can be charged in, say, about 500 cycles.
Okay.
These are advanced batteries. These are good batteries.
That seems small, though, because if I have an EV and I used it every day, I would be charging and discharging it 365 times in a year. So if I use it EV every day, is the battery only going to last me 1.5 years?
Oh, no. The way how these numbers are calculated are for complete discharge and complete charge. So 500 cycles enables in that framework much longer lifetime. So, but you're quite right that we need to increase this number even more. And we have to do it in parallel with the increase of the energy which is stored in the battery. But also have to increase it in parallel with the charging rate and reduction of weight and increasing the temperature that it can operate with.
Right.
Because if you increase the charge rate, internal temperature of the battery increasing. So these are a lot of parameters, a lot of very significant factors which affect the usability of the battery in electrical vehicles.
Got it. So if lithium sulfur batteries charge and discharge cycle is so small, why use lithium sulfur battery?
Because of all the other parameters are pretty good.
Okay, so sell me on the lithium sulfur battery. So the
cost. I don't need to sell you too much.
Is that right?
That's the biggest cost thing. And availability. Yes. So the other factor is, of course, the energy density. Yeah. So for lithium sulfur, it can be as high as 1600 milliampere per gram. So just to give you a rough idea, it's several times higher, let's say 2-3 times higher than advanced batteries that we have right now.
Right.
So because it's lithium metal, it has high energy content. And sulfur also has capacity to accommodate a lot of lithium ions. So altogether, as a pair of anode and cathode, lithium sulfur battery is very advantageous because it stores a lot of energy, it's cheap, and it also, in principle, can be recharged fairly fast.
Very fast.
But there are some issues, as I mentioned.
Right. So is it the structure of the sulfur material that holds more lithium? Because I know it's graphite's pretty commonly used, and graphite's got this layered lattice structure, which allows a lot of lithium ions to be packed in there.
Yeah, absorbed. Sulfur is advantageous because it forms labile bonds with lithium.
Okay.
And these bonds can be formed and then destroyed by applying voltage.
Okay.
So that's the big advantage. And the number of lithium ions per the volume of sulfur can be large. So for the same volume that sulfur can hold and graphite or graphene can hold, sulfur wins.
Okay, and by a big margin.
By a big margin. It's not just a few percent. Even a few percent matter in battery because it's all about how to gradually improve the range, how gradually decrease the cost. And lithium sulfur affords a big jump.
Got it. What makes the charging and discharging faster for sulfur? You said lithium sulfur is a fast charge and discharge as well?
What matters there that lithium is a metal, so it conducts electricity fairly well.
Okay.
What also matters that sulfur is normally mixed with carbon, which makes a cathode fairly conductive.
Got it.
So altogether, that works to advantage of the battery overall.
Got it. So what was the innovation that caused the 1,000 cycle battery, which I think is at least double, right, or triple?
Say it's double. By some other metrics, it can triple even, or more. There are many batteries now which are entering the markets or are being developed. In all these batteries, what really matters for the cycle life is the membrane, the thin film of normally plastic, which separates cathode and anode.
Right.
These membranes are charged, pun intended, with a lot of jobs.
Right.
First, they need to stop the growth of metal spikes on lithium. So these are the lithium dendrites, which can penetrate through the space between cathode and anode. And once they do that, there is a short circuit, which results in fires and all the other bad stuff.
Right.
But there are some more.
Right. So please do. And you said there are some more.
Yeah, because this membrane, besides stopping the dendrites, need to be ionically conductive and highly ionically conductive.
To allow the lithium ions to pass through. Does it need to attract the lithium ions towards it, or it just needs to?
It can just pass it along. So
right.
But what it needs to do also, and in particularly for lithium sulfur battery, is not to just be conductive for any ions. It needs to be conductive specifically for lithium ions and not conductive for other ions which exist there, which are lithium polysulfides.
Right.
Which is a big actor there. And these are the problematic ions which results in a very short life cycle of lithium sulfur battery.
Got it. And so the innovation to get the 1,000 cycle lithium sulfur battery is in the membrane. Is that
exactly right?
Can you elaborate, please?
Yes, it is. So that's where we might want to see and learn at nature, or to see what nature does and to learn from it. And all the biological organisms, all the species use some ion-selective membranes. So the membranes which allow some ions to pass and some ions they reject.
Got it.
And the art of ion-selective membranes in biology is in chemistry and size of ion channels.
Right.
We have been working on biomimetic membranes for quite some time. So we know how to create both the right size ion channels and chemistry in these ion channels, which for batteries in particular is important for charge and environmental stability. So the invention is, and the reason why this battery works for so long, is that we were able to create the ion-selective membrane for these batteries, which is allowing lithium ions from anode to go through, but they don't allow the same membrane for lithium polysulfide to go back.
Got it.
And so this is basically the little magic which is in there. I can compare it to a lot of membranes which are in the cell that you and I are made of, in neurons and some other cells. So the knowledge of that have been transferred into the ion-selective batteries, which create such good batteries.
I am curious about that. How did you come across or invent or discover such a material that are you able to engineer this material?
Yeah, absolutely. We purposefully engineer this material specifically for the batteries.
Specifically to let lithium ions through, but not let lithium polysulfide ions going back. And so what particular properties are you looking for in order to be? Is it that the lithium ions are small, so the channels need to be small, or?
Oh, you're absolutely right, Sudhi. So it needs to be small. It also needs to be charged.
Okay.
And playing with the charge and size enables us to finesse the action of these channels.
Okay.
Say we need for lithium ions to go through.
Yeah.
I mean, we obviously need to have the size of the channels to be a little larger than, somewhat larger than the size of ions.
Yeah.
The hard part for lithium sulfur battery is that the size of lithium polysulfides is not much bigger. It's bigger, but not by much. So we don't have a big margin how we can be engineering the size of the channel. We also need to engineer its charge. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that we also need to increase the asymmetry of the membranes. What's interesting is that when we look at, let's say, at lithium polysulfide, its size is slightly bigger than that of lithium. Its charge is negative, but lithium is positive.
Right.
And also, we have to stop it on the side of sulfur, on the side of cathode. Even if it passes through just a little bit through the channel, it's already not so good. It can diffuse out, eventually it may leak a little bit. So we have to be very selective, even at the initial stages.
Right.
So what happens is that lithium polysulfide specifically absorbs on the plastic material that we use for the membrane. Mm-hmm. It has specific affinity to it. And the membrane is made from a material called aramid, which is a nanoscale version of Kevlar.
Okay.
And lithium polysulfides, due to their covalent bonding to some groups on aramid, on the surface of the membranes, they stick to it, they charge the membrane, and they charge it preferentially on the side of the cathode, on the sulfur.
Okay.
So altogether, it works in favor of ionic selectivity on several fronts, on several factors: size, charge, and the symmetry.
Got it. Going back to the question then,
mm-hmm.
What makes the number of cycles go up? Is it because it seems like you're increasing the life? So what part of the engineering is increasing the life?
You have to do it on several pieces of the or on several properties of the membrane in the same time.
Yeah. And
that's the difficult part. So there are some membranes that can select lithium over polysulfide, mm-hmm. But they're soft. Mm-hmm. There are some membranes which can be very strong, but the size of the channels is big.
Okay.
There are some membranes which do the ionic selectivity well, but they cannot stop the growth of the dendrites well.
Right. So you need all three.
All of these properties matter in the lifetime in order to increase the cycle life.
Got it.
And so this combination of small ion channels, chemistry of aramid, how it's structured from nanometer scale fibers, all that contributes to all of these properties and enables us to address all the needs of, say, automotive industry well.
Got it. Why stop at 1,000 cycles? What happens when you get to 1,000?
Actually, we continue.
Okay.
It's actually not just 1,000, it's actually 3,500 cycles.
Okay. So this could keep going. So the number of, and so 3,500 cycles is 10 years. If I think about full charge and discharge of a battery every single day, almost 10 years.
That is correct.
And so what is happening as the cycle is happening? Is it the membrane is degrading? Is it the charge selectivity is deteriorating? What limits the number of cycles?
The exact nature of the process which limits this cycle life for these batteries is still not very clear to us.
Right.
It's very high.
Yeah.
But what aspect we need to work on right now in order to increase it further is something that we did not look at this point. Because as you say, if the battery can last for 10 years,
yeah,
it's already fairly good.
Yeah.
It is a quantum leap from what the batteries are in, say, electrical vehicles or other devices now, especially in respect to cost. What we are focused right now is actually on a different part of the batteries, not just on the parameters, which we know we can extend further. We are focused on understanding how we can extend the size of the battery. So these are the numbers which are obtained for the small cells. And we are now looking for the ways how to make it in big cells and how to make these membranes in a roll-to-roll fashion, which is quite important for every producer of the battery, because they need to be integrated with cathodes and anodes, and it's currently done from the rolls of the membranes.
Right.
So that's the thing that we are looking for right now, or we are focusing all our attention at.
Right, and that is what makes it more practical in order to make it. How far do you think we are in getting a roll of this membrane that can go into a mass production?
Not too far. So we have already a prototype of that production in the lab. I also had a company in the past which had been sold not long ago. And we also had looked at the same prototypes then. So now we want to create the roll-to-roll manufacturing for this membrane.
Got it.
So we're not too far. It depends on, of course, how many people are working. Currently have just a couple of students and the postdoc, very talented students, very hardworking, but certainly it depends on the manpower.
Right, and you're more, at this point, looking at manufacturing innovation and not material science innovation. Is that true?
It's both. It's always both. So when you transition from, say, small scale to large scale, you always have to think and have two hats at the same time. One is the head of material scientist, and the other head is of engineer for the manufacturing plant. Because change of manufacturing process, changing the materials process, properties.
Correct. Yeah, got it.
And we know how to deal with the materials. That is something which I'm confident about. But we now have to get the first part, the first hat I wore most of the time when I'm thinking about this, is how to transition this small batch process to the large batch, to the roll-to-roll fashion.
Got it. In our conversation with battery, the technology that you've been alluding to is these nanostructures.
Yes, these nanofibers of aramid, or Kevlar if you want.
Right. And so I went digging in your research to find out more about these nanostructures. And one sentence really hit me, and it's this one.
Tell me.
The ability to self-organize into complex structures is the unifying property of all inorganic nanostructures.
Oh my God, you found the right.
And I saw that and I thought, gosh, there's a lot more to this, because it seems like we're almost touching creation of life in it. But I don't want to get as close as that, because creation of life is there's chemistry all around, and at some point, chemical molecules decide to organize and form things. And but before I get to that, help me understand what that sentence means.
Yeah, in my mind, it matters a lot for manufacturing, because the ability of structures to self-organize, meaning that they use the thermal energy, free energy, and making the complex structures is important for manufacturing now more and more.
Okay.
So while it definitely has the connotations for all the things that you mentioned, for me, it matters specifically how to transition the technology from the lab to the big plants. And it had been done in the past already many times for self-assembly in a very conceptual way. What this sentence means is, if we have the nanometer scale, small structure, which is much smaller than a dust particle in the liquid, it has ability to move. It has ability to interact in a very specific fashion with other nanometer scale structures.
What is the driving force or physics behind it?
It's the so-called Brownian motion.
Yeah, Brownian motion.
The experiment that I bet you have done at high school.
Right.
I bet you have heard about. And the Brownian motion, and when there is a speck of dust or pollen at the times of Brown and Einstein,
yeah,
moves in the fluid by the action of the molecules which are around it. So it moves because the molecules of water, say, transfer impulses to it. Scale it down to the nanometer scale particles, which are 1,000 times smaller than dust or a pollen, thousands. It retains that ability. But on top of it, it has the ability to be asymmetric, just like the membranes that we mentioned. So it's not a round sphere. It has certain facets, it has attractive points here, attractive repulsive points there, and altogether this complexity of particles multiplied or amplified by their ability to move around and attach to each other creates complexity of these membranes or some biological forms, and can be utilized for energy-efficient manufacturing in industry.
Brownian motion is random, right. But at the nanoscale level, are you suggesting that given a specific type of molecule, it will form a specific structure?
Brownian motion is random, but how the particles are attaching to each other, being acted upon by the Brownian motion, is not random. So the particles move in a very perhaps random way.
Yeah.
Of course, it's also subject to conditions. It may not move in the random way at all. So the way how we discovered it, it's actually happened quite some time ago, actually 20 years ago.
Okay.
That we observed the nanoparticles, they move randomly, but they form a chain. So that chain is formed because of the particle attaching to each other in a very specific fashion.
And
they like this formation of the chain. They have dipoles there. So, and that forces them to form a specific pattern of attached particles to each other.
Was it a specific molecule that formed the chain?
Well, particles, not the molecules.
Got it.
Or you can say much bigger molecules. So nanoscale structures are very significant here because they have much more of this asymmetry, of this complexity already built in.
Got it. And so that, is it fair to say, is one of the fundamental technology or phenomena that you are utilizing in
making these membranes? You're absolutely right, Sudhi.
Okay.
We start with the nanofibers of Kevlar, which we make from, old vests. Okay. I mean, I would argue that a lot of old vests are thrown away, burned, and pollute the environments. But this plastic is very valuable. So we don't want to just throw it away. In this way, we can make the nanofibers and reform the old products in the new products.
Got it. Why Kevlar? Why not some other type of a plastic nanofiber? Is there some property particular to Kevlar material?
Yes, indeed. Kevlar is known for, in fact, iconic for its toughness and strength and environmental resilience. So it's a good polymer. It's a polymer for which Stephanie Kowalik from DuPont should have been awarded the Nobel Prize. This is a remarkable material. And for batteries, it's particularly significant, all these properties, toughness, strength, resilience, because when we're thinking about dendrites, they create large force on the membrane. This membrane needs to be not just strong, it needs to be ultra strong.
Got it.
Yeah, and these fibers have that quality of Kevlar.
Got it.
And if they are forming a tight network of self-assembled porous materials,
right,
these dendrites which are trying to get through cannot.
Got it. Is physical force the only way to stop these dendrites from coming through? Isn't the charge in some way also trying to repel some of these polysulfides from coming?
There are other ways how to do it also, but again, when we are looking at the lithium metal, when we're looking at high discharge and charging rate, we have to have something more than just chemistry. And physical integrity of the membrane is critical there. So physical force, which pushing them back, is the most reliable way to do it.
Got it.
And you can play, of course, with some additives, but eventually the additives fail.
Yeah. That is a very cool and intriguing phenomena of nanostructures. Is it an indication of perhaps how chemistry turned to biology, sort of mixing? I know it's a big
thought. It's a little bit of jump from batteries, but it's not a crazy thought at all. So I don't want to, to move away too far, but eventually, in order for life to become life, it needs to go through the nanometer scale structures. And everything which you said in that sentence is applicable to biological structures, nanoscale structures, as well as to inorganic nanometer scale structures. If at some point way back, these molecules formed organic nanometer scale objects, which self-organized into complex structures. I don't know if it was exactly like this or not. In fact, we never know.
Right. But at least it's one glimpse into a phenomena that happens at the nanometer scale.
That's absolutely true, which we can harness. We may not know how the life emerged,
Right.
But knowing that, we can harness that phenomenon for the technologies that we need.
Right, got it. What other applications are you thinking about for these nanostructures or things that you can engineer? And battery membranes is being one. What other applications?
Right. In fact, we're thinking about some other applications of the similar membranes.
Mm-hmm.
So I do believe that the Kevlar nanofibers can lead to a number of very useful membranes that can differ by the openings of pores, mm-hmm. or the polymers that they absorb, or the chemistries of ions they can evaporate.
Yeah.
All of that comes through the scale up in roll-to-roll fashion. And that's why we're very much focused on that. So one other application that we have been considering and also have some good examples that these aramid nanofibers work quite well for them is so-called the blue energy.
Blue energy?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the energy which is formed when ocean mixes with the river water.
Okay.
One is salty, one is not.
Right.
It's also applicable not only to this situation, to maybe big installations in estuaries of the rivers, or maybe some dams which are needed to be built, say, in Louisiana or Texas, just anyway. But it also can be applied to the discharge of polluted water from plants. So it normally eluted.
Yeah.
And at the moment of dilution, that's when we can harvest that blue energy. So it's basically the energy which is created when ions pass through ion-selective membranes, mm-hmm. and some ions better than the others, and mm-hmm. they create the voltage on both sides of the membranes.
Okay. And how much energy can we really create from?
In this way?
Yeah.
It depends how salty the water is. So the higher the salt concentration, mm-hmm. and the more efficient the membrane is, the higher the voltage. And you can stack them, of course.
Yeah.
So it can be a sizable amount. And in fact, Netherlands and Norway, there are some blue energy plants. Mm-hmm. Used to be, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
At least one of them, that had generated energy which is enough to feed into the grid. Mm-hmm. The membranes were the problem that one of these has to be shut down because it's not costly, it's not cost efficient.
Yeah.
And not cost efficient because of the membranes. So we need to create better membranes for that, which could be less expensive, that could be more efficient, long-lasting, resilient to the variation of the temperature. So all of these qualities that we established by this nanometer scale engineering of these aramid nanofiber membranes for lithium sulfur.
Got it. The other thing that I noticed, which I thought was quite interesting, was mm-hmm. bio-inspired composite materials.
Right.
That you talked about. Is that a what's bio-inspired about it? Are you looking at nature to figure out the shapes and molecules that you would need?
Shapes of nanostructures.
Okay.
But you're absolutely right in that too.
So give me an example.
With pleasure. And it's very easy. If we look at cartilage, the very same thing that keep our knees functional for tens of years.
Yeah.
And we abuse them.
Yeah.
We run, we kick, climb stairs and sitting down when we need to, walk. And the structure of cartilage is made from very similarly shaped fibers, which are interconnected in a similar pattern as these membranes.
As the Kevlar membrane you were talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
So if we took a membrane from cartilage, it's also in some other places, a lot of membranes, kidney membranes, for instance, also, diaphragm is made in a similar fashion. Look at the structure and mathematically analyze it. This is the structure of cartilage. This is the structure of the aramid nanofiber membrane. It's identical, nearly identical. So how it's built, how it's connected to each other, all contributes to the functionality of the membranes. Flexibility, the distribution of stress, size of the pores, because we need to have a sizable flux of ions.
Right. Are you able to create or engineer? We talked about engineering membranes with a certain diameter of hole. I understand that. What about this complex intertwining structures? Are you able to look at life and mimic that, the same structure and intertwining?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So these membranes are in fact have been inspired by two things in the same time. One is the say mesoscale, microscale structure which replicates cartilage, but the other one is this molecular atomic ionic scale, which is ion-selective channels.
Okay.
Both of these inspirations have been for the first time integrated in these membranes. And that's ultimately the reason, the structural foundation why these membranes are so functional, why they cannot withhold the mechanic stress, why they cannot, why they separate lithium from lithium polysulfide, why they last that long. Ultimately, it's related to this.
Got it. Does the organic world around us have ion-selective membranes? I recognize like our cartilage has the structure for strength and the flexibility, but do we also have ion-selective properties in the organic world?
Yes, we do. We have it pretty much everywhere.
Okay.
Every bacteria, or starting from the bacteria and up, outside the viruses, they're also at nanometer scale, but they operate a little differently. Starting from bacteria to every living creature that we have has ion-selective channels. It's used for different purposes to control, say, penetration of sodium ions versus potassium ions in neurons and other cells, or some ions like hydrogen ions. For bacteria, it needs to retain acidity in a particular range in order to be alive. All of these functions are controlled by ion channels in the membranes. And rolling back, the functionalities of the aramid nanofiber membranes and why they are so good in the batteries is related to that capability, or to knowledge how we can create the ion selectivity, embed them in the membranes, and make the membrane strong.
Got it. So I'd like to have you look forward to kind of bring our whole conversation together. If everything goes well in your research and the manufacturing scalability, et cetera. What do you think the electric vehicle battery will look like in 10 years?
Smaller. That's for sure. Cheaper too. I also would think that these advanced batteries that many people, including us and other people at the University of Michigan, are working on, will enable a conceptually different type of batteries.
How so?
Yeah. So now the batteries are blocks.
Yeah.
You put it in the vehicle or camera, phone, and once they are failed, we'll replace them. Now let's think about it a little bit further down the line when the battery can last for 10 years. You will replace the car maybe earlier than the battery.
Isn't that an interesting world?
Yes, that would be an interesting world. And I would argue that a lot of batteries at that world, in fact, we can see evidence for that now, will be in robots. Mm-hmm. The batteries at that time would also be working double duty. So it's not just the energy storage, it's also a part of the structure of that robot, of that vehicle. Right. The batteries can be integrated in the load-bearing architecture of that machine.
Just like our airplane wings. They're part of the structure, the lifting structure, and
they carry fuel.
Energy storage.
Yes, exactly right. I would also say that that would be batteries just like fat. A layer of fat. I do have some.
So do we all do.
Yes. So it will be a combination of energy storage and additional functionalities. For us, it's the functionality of insulation, of thermal insulation, and some biological functionalities. There are some stem cells which are working in fat. There is some structural functions which fat also. Right. But in terms of the batteries, if we integrate them in, say, the carcass of the vehicle, if we integrate it in panels on the roof, on the side, on the doors, these batteries can be protective, so it has the load-bearing functionality, and can be integrated in the energy balance of that vehicle.
Got it. But are you then imagining these batteries still be hard blocks, or are you imagining them more as soft pouches in the spaces of the chassis?
That is up to engineering of what makes better sense. Okay. So there are examples of the structural batteries in both ways. We created them from electrodes from zinc, which is kind of a rigid metal. It's not lithium. It has good charge storage properties and can be integrated, as well as the mechanical properties, and can be integrated in, for instance, the drone covers. So I anticipate that if you have these variable batteries with a variable shape, which you can press, you can adapt to the shape of your vehicle, you can have very simple manufacturing process which allows one to integrate these batteries into the structure. That's the advantage. It could be some other ways. I also would like to point out that the structural batteries are not saying no to, say, classical batteries. It's just making a better vehicle which fits a particular function the best way possible.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some vehicles need to be lighter. I mean, if you think about, say, the taxis, which with vertical takeoff,
Yeah.
Batteries are exceptionally important there. They have to reduce the amount of weight as much as possible. That's when, I mean, this option of reducing the overall weight of the vehicle by balancing the, classical battery as a block to the batteries which are integrated in the structure of that taxi would really make it shine and functional.
Got it. So higher density, smaller, lighter,
Yes.
and more malleable or more shape-shifting.
Yes, yes.
Batteries.
So I think you will see in the future the batteries, not just, parallelepiped or cylinders, but all kinds of shape, which are specifically built in order to make, say, a device, a vehicle more functional, better suited to a specific environment, to allow it to be lighter and energy efficient.
Fantastic. Professor, thank you so much.
My pleasure.